The battery is on. The phone is charging. One room still looks usable. And that is when people think the outage is under control. Because a powered device is not the same as a functioning house. The kitchen can already be getting harder to use. The path through the house can already be getting awkward. And the next few hours may already be forcing workarounds. The setup starts looking covered before the house actually is. You can have backup power in the house and still be losing the functions that keep daily life working. Most people start with the wrong question. They ask what they can power. That is not useless. It is just not enough. The real question is whether the house still works where it matters. Can the kitchen still be used without turning every small task into friction? Can people move through the house safely at night? Are the parts of the home that protect food, water, and the rest of the house already covered? That is the difference between having some power and having a house that is still usable. And most backup mistakes start right there. The easiest things to power are often the easiest things to overvalue. A charged phone feels useful. One lit corner feels reassuring. A battery with a healthy display feels like progress. But outages do not get harder in the parts of the house that look reassuring. They get harder where normal use starts breaking down. Small loads are not the problem by themselves. The problem is what happens when they make the setup look better than the house really is. Once that happens, attention shifts to what is easy to see instead of the parts of the home that start slipping first. Start with the kitchen. This is usually where the mistake becomes obvious. The phone can be full. The battery can still have charge. But if cold storage is slipping, the kitchen is already starting to work worse. Now the outage has a clock on it. Now you stop trusting the food to hold. People start checking instead of leaving things alone. Basic kitchen use gets clumsy because the room no longer works cleanly. And that changes behavior faster than people expect. You stop using the room normally. You hesitate before opening the fridge. You start bunching tasks together because light, counter space, and cold storage no longer feel reliable at the same time. Even simple things take more attention than they should. That is where the setup starts lying to you. A small device is still proving that power exists. The kitchen is proving that useful function is already getting tighter. The useful question is no longer, do I still have some power? It is, can this part of the house still do its job? Once the kitchen stops working properly, people stop treating the outage like a short inconvenience. Then the house gets harder to move through. Not everywhere at once. In the parts of the house people still need after dark. The route to the bathroom. The path through the kitchen. The places where somebody turns a normal trip into careful movement because the light is in the wrong room, not along the path. This is another place where partial power can fool you. You have light, but not where people need it. One room looks better. The house works worse. And once movement gets awkward, the outage starts adding friction to ordinary things people still have to do. You see it in slower steps, in hands reaching for walls, counters, and door frames, in people avoiding parts of the house because using them has become annoying, dim, or easy to misjudge. Nothing looks dramatic, but the house is already asking for more effort than normal. That is when a manageable outage starts asking more from people than it should. Not because one big thing failed, because normal movement has turned into repeated small corrections. Then the less visible failures start to matter. A few outlets may still work. Small devices may still run. but that does not tell you much about whether the house will hold together through the next several hours. The heat can be off, while one room still looks fine. A sump pump can be sitting still, and nobody notices because nothing looks wrong yet. A well pump can be out, and the problem only becomes real when somebody expects water to behave normally, and it does not. That is how partial power creates false confidence. Nothing urgent seems to be happening. The battery still has charge. The room still looks calm. So people assume the important parts are probably fine for a little longer. Then the house starts making the decisions for you. A room gets colder than expected. Water use becomes something people start managing instead of assuming. The equipment nobody was thinking about becomes the reason the night gets harder. By the time the setup feels thin, the problem has usually been building for a while. Not because there was no backup in the house, because the backup was keeping the easy things alive, while the house was starting to lose something more important. In most homes, it goes the same way. First, the kitchen gets tighter. Then movement gets more awkward. Then the background systems people were not watching start forcing decisions. By that point, people are no longer using the house normally. They are adjusting around it. That is the part that matters. Not that nothing works, that the wrong things still work, while the house gets harder to live in. Stored power only helps when it is carrying the parts of the home that start causing trouble first. Cold storage, safe movement, water, heat, basic access. If it is not doing that, then the setup is not really covering the outage. It is only delaying how quickly the house starts wearing people down. The better model is simpler than most people think. Do not start with, "What can I run?" Start with, "What has to keep working so this home stays usable?" That shifts the whole plan. Now the question is not how to make the outage look smaller. It is how to stop the house from getting harder to live in. That usually means protecting cold storage first, putting light where people actually walk and work, and covering anything that needs powered water or heat. Keeping just enough communication and access to stay organized without wasting stored power on loads that only feel important. That is what the backup has to support first, not saving every comfort, not making one room look normal, not proving that the battery was worth buying. The job is to keep the house from sliding into food loss, unsafe movement, water trouble, or a long night of small, bad decisions. It usually takes a smaller, stricter plan than people expect. Less showy, more useful. In a real house, vague priorities fail fast. If your backup power does not protect the functions that fail first, then the setup may look reassuring and still leave the house exposed. When the power goes out, does your house still work where it matters? Not somewhere, where it matters. If the kitchen is getting harder to use, the cold storage is no longer secure, the path through the house is becoming awkward, and the only thing clearly working is a battery charging a phone, then the backup is not protecting the home. It is only proving that electricity still exists in one corner of the house. That is the difference between power in the house and a house that still works. Because the mistake is not having no backup. The mistake is thinking the house is covered when the parts that carry the night are already slipping. And if you get that wrong, the outage does not stay a neat inconvenience. It turns into spoiled food, a colder house, awkward movement, water trouble, and a backup setup that looked reassuring right up until it stopped protecting the parts of the house that mattered most. Because in a real outage, homes usually do not fail all at once. They fail in the wrong places first. And that is the next thing you need to understand. What actually fails first in a normal home when the power goes out?